I'm the moderator for your telephone town hall tonight with your MPP, Frank Klees, and your Ontario PC candidate for Newmarket and Aurora. Frank wants to talk to you directly about the issue, the Glenway redevelopment proposal, and you're going to hear from him directly. Frank, please go ahead.
Thanks, Richard, and again, good evening, and thank you for joining me on this call tonight. All Glenway residents for whom listed telephone numbers were available were invited to join in. And I want you to know that no one was excluded from participating. Now, I'm going to give you my phone number and email address a couple of times during this call so that you have a chance to write it down, and in case you want to follow up with me personally about any of the issues I'm going to discuss on this call. So my phone number is 416-509-8999. That's my personal cell number. My email address is F as in Frank Klees @rogers.blackberry.net. Folks, the purpose of this call tonight is twofold. First, to make my position on the proposed redevelopment of your community very clear. And second, to give you important information about the Places to Grow Act. This provincial legislation was passed into law by the McGuinty government in 2005. And it's important that you understand that it's this provincial legislation and its companion planning document known as the Growth Plan that is responsible for the predicament that you're in today. So on the first point, I want to restate what I said in my letter that was delivered to every household by Canada Post last week. Unfortunately, I discovered that for some unknown reason, it was never delivered to many of you. That's why I thought it was important to have this call with you this evening. In that letter, I made it clear that I will support you and your council in opposing the redevelopment of your community. I also explained that this isn't a difficult decision for me because I know what it means to have your established community threatened with infill housing and condominiums. Myself and my family faced that very same prospect in our neighborhood in Aurora just a few years ago. Now, fortunately, my neighbors and I were successful in opposing that redevelopment, which consisted of infilling the golf course with new homes, adding condos into the mix, and shortening the golf course. The difference, though, between then and now was that our local council was able to exercise its authority and protect our community. The reason it was able to do that is that there was no Places to Grow Act, and municipalities still, at that time, had decision-making authority over these issues. So contrary to what you may have heard from some, you can count on me to stand with you on this issue, because I know what the threat of redevelopment means to you, and I believe it's fundamentally wrong for the provincial government to overrule a duly elected local government on important issues such as community planning. I also want you to know that I met with the developer's representative, Joanne Barnett, and I advised her that I would be supporting the residents of Glenway and that I would be working to prevent any development that is not supported by the community and the town of Newmarket. Now that brings me to the second point that I want to make tonight. I know that the community is organizing to oppose the redevelopment plans and that you're launching petitions and may be considering retaining legal counsel. I know that you've been assured by Newmarket Council that you will have council support and that the town is in the process of retaining consultants to assist with the process as it attempts to defend its official plan. But I also feel it's my responsibility to let you know that regardless of what the town may be able to do by way of opposing the redevelopment application, the real threat to your community is the McGuinty government's Places to Grow Act. This legislation sets out the framework for growth in communities across the province, and in the name of preventing urban sprawl, mandates intensification within existing urban boundaries. What is most offensive about this legislation is that it forces intensification on municipalities, whether the local council wants it or not. In short, the Places to Grow Act overrides local councils and local official plans. It essentially strips local councils of their decision-making authority when it comes to these planning issues. In the interest of time, I won't quote chapter and verse of the legislation that set the foundation for this top-down decision-making, but I would urge you to look up the Places to Grow Act on the Ontario government website and begin by reading the preamble of the legislation, which makes it clear that local planning has been taken over by the provincial government. You'll discover the numerous references to requiring municipal official plans to conform to the intensification and density goals set out by the provincial government. In other words, the McGuinty government has taken direct control over how growth will take place in the province and in each municipality, regardless of what a local council may consider appropriate or regardless of a municipality's official plan. The principles set out in the provincial legislation will prevail, and any decisions made by the Ontario Municipal Board must be consistent with that legislation. That's why in the Glenway case, the developer was willing to buy the Glenway property without conditions of rezoning approval. The developer knows that the process will unfold as follows. He knows the council will oppose the development application. He knows that the application will be appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board. And he knows that the Ontario Municipal Board will render a decision that must be consistent with the principles set out in the Places to Grow Act. And he knows that one of the cornerstones of that legislation is intensification. So, just as the judges in our courts are duty-bound to render decisions consistent with the relevant laws, so are the presiding members of the Ontario Municipal Board, which is a quasi-judicial body, duty-bound to make their decisions based on the relevant planning legislation. Furthermore, in the Glenway case, the Ontario Municipal Board will be further constrained in its decision by language in the accompanying growth plan. Again, I encourage you to review pages 12 and 13 of the growth plan, where you'll find extensive references to increasing intensification of built-up areas and optimizing the use of existing land supply. According to the plan, this represents, and I quote, a new approach to city planning, end of quote. City planning that, quite frankly, I find offensive, and I'm sure you do as well. Given this language in the Places to Grow Act and its companion growth plan, and the fact that the decision-making has essentially been stripped from the municipality should this matter end up at the OMB, under the current legislative framework, I think you can see why the developer feels very confident about the outcome. So what's the answer? Contrary to what some are suggesting, it's not the OMB that's the problem here. It's the McGuinty government's Places to Grow Act that has uploaded the decision-making about what our communities should look like to the provincial cabinet. And just in case you think you're alone, there are Glenways and municipalities all over this province in a similar situation. I just want to point out that this isn't the only place where the McGuinty government stripped local councils of approval rights. They also did it in their Green Energy Act, where local councils were stripped of any say over whether wind turbines could be constructed, with the result that the quality of life of entire communities is threatened, not to mention the financial implications to families due to a loss of land values. And that's the very reason why we put this issue front and center in our policy document. We believe that decision-making authority should be restored to local councils when it comes to planning issues that affect our communities, and a PC government will act quickly to restore that authority. I hope that this information has been helpful to you in at least understanding where your energies need to be focused as you mount your efforts to defend your community. During a recent debate in Newmarket, the Liberal candidate pointed to the town's official plan and said she would defend it, and that she wanted to reform the OMB. With all due respect, she doesn't understand the issue. The threat to your community lies in the McGuinty government's Places to Grow Act. This is the legislation that promotes the transfer of green space into the hands of developers, even though the municipality has planned for that space to be an integral part of your community. It will take a PC government to change that legislation, and it will take experience and determination to ensure this is a priority for the next government. I look forward to working with you to make that happen. Now, if anyone has any questions, as I said at the outset, please give me a call, and I'll be glad to get back to you. Or if you would like to meet with me, I'd be glad to do that as well. Again, my telephone number is 416-509-8999. And my email address is F as in Frank, Klees @rogers.blackberry.net. And as well, if you'd like to leave me a message now, just stay on the line and you'll be prompted to leave a message. I thank you again for joining me in this call, and I do hope it's been helpful.